A man in a black tracksuit stands on the touchline, and he is losing the fight to hold back tears. 53,000 voices are singing his name back at him. Above him, a stadium built on ghosts and glory is shaking. This is the last time Jurgen Klopp will ever walk out at Anfield as Liverpool's manager, and in a few minutes, the club he rebuilt from heartbreak will say goodbye to the man who taught them how to feel again. But to understand why grown men are crying in the stands that day, you have to go back 9 years, to a club that had forgotten what winning even felt like. October 2015. Liverpool are not a superpower. They are a museum. A club living off photographs of 1980s European Cups, selling nostalgia to a fan base that hadn't lifted the league title since before the internet existed. Brendan Rodgers had just been sacked. The squad was disjointed, low on belief, and the training ground looked more like a hospital ward than a battlefield. Then, from Germany, came a name most casual fans barely recognized. A tall, bearded, grinning former Mainz and Dortmund coach who walked into his first press conference and did something no Liverpool manager had ever dared to do. He looked at the cameras and called himself the normal one.
I'm the normal one, maybe, if you want this.
Not the special one. Not a savior. Just a man with a plan and a smile that felt dangerously out of place in a club that had forgotten how to hope. The early months were not a fairy tale. They were a warning sign that hope alone doesn't win football matches. Liverpool drew game after game. Pundits questioned whether his relentless, suffocating pressing style, the kind that had terrorized Bundesliga defenses, could ever survive the brutal pace of the Premier League. Players looked exhausted trying to run a system their bodies weren't built for. Fans who had cheered his arrival started asking the same question that haunts every bold appointment. What if this was a mistake? What nobody in that stadium knew yet was that Klopp had already lived through the exact kind of heartbreak this club was terrified of repeating. Rewind further to Dortmund 2013. Klopp had built something remarkable there too. A scrappy, unfashionable Borussia Dortmund side that punched miles above its financial weight and dragged the club to the Champions League final at Wembley. They lost to Bayern Munich, their closest rivals, in the cruelest possible fashion, a late winner in the final minutes. Klopp walked off that pitch having proven he could build greatness, but not yet finish it. That pain would follow him across the North Sea, and it would quietly shape everything that came next. Back at Liverpool, the turning point didn't arrive with a trophy. It arrived with a miracle nobody saw coming. April 2016, the Europa League quarterfinal, and Liverpool were staring down a 2-goal deficit against Klopp's old club, Borussia Dortmund. Anfield that night became something closer to a religious experience than a football match. Liverpool clawed back goal after goal until Dejan Lovren, of all people, headed home a stoppage-time winner, and the entire stadium simply collapsed into noise. It shouldn't have mattered in the grand scheme of trophies. But it told every player in that dressing room something far more important. This manager could make them believe in the impossible. That belief needed weapons, though, and Klopp knew exactly which ones to buy. Piece by piece, the empire started forming. A raw, explosive winger from Roma named Mohamed Salah arrived and would go on to rewrite the club's goal-scoring history. A Senegalese forward, Sadio Mane, brought a ruthless directness that terrified defenders. And then came the 2 signings that would transform Liverpool from dangerous to nearly unbeatable: a commanding Dutch center-back named Virgil van Dijk and a Brazilian goalkeeper named Alisson Becker, who turned the club's biggest weakness into one of its greatest strengths. Klopp didn't just buy players. He built a machine, and he gave it a name the football world would repeat for years: heavy metal football. Relentless, chaotic, beautiful to watch, and absolutely miserable to play against. But before the trophies came, there was more pain. The kind that makes the eventual glory taste sweeter and cost more all at once. Kiev, 2018. The Champions League final against Real Madrid. Salah went down injured in the first half, carried off in tears. Liverpool's goalkeeper made 2 catastrophic errors that gifted Real Madrid the trophy. Klopp had reached his 3rd European final as a manager. He had lost all 3. Whispers started again, the cruelest kind. The ones that call a man a nearly man, brilliant at building teams that fall just short of the finish line. Then came a season so agonizingly close to perfect that it almost broke Liverpool's spirit entirely. The 2018-19 Premier League campaign. Liverpool lost only one match all season. They finished with 97 points, a total that would have won almost every previous title race in English football history, and they finished second. Manchester City, in one of the greatest title races the league has ever witnessed, finished one single point ahead. 97 points and nothing to show for it but heartbreak. Klopp needed an answer, and 3 weeks later, he found one in the most dramatic fashion imaginable. The Champions League semi-final against Barcelona, a team built around Lionel Messi at his absolute peak, had crushed Liverpool 3-0 in the first leg. It was over, everyone agreed. Then Anfield happened again. Missing their two best attackers through injury, Liverpool destroyed Barcelona 4-0 on the night. A scoreline so improbable that even neutral fans still call it one of the greatest comebacks football has ever produced. A substitute named Divock Origi, a man who barely started matches all season, scored twice, including the iconic corner kick goal that sent the stadium into delirium. Liverpool went on to win the Champions League final weeks later. Klopp had finally turned his nearly mad reputation into something else entirely, a winner. What followed was pure domination. The 2019-20 Premier League title arrived the following season, and this time there was no dramatic twist needed. Liverpool were simply unstoppable, wrapping up the league with games still to spare, ending a 30-year wait for the trophy that had defined the club's identity for a generation. Cruelly, the celebrations were muted by a global pandemic. Fans locked out of the stadium they had waited 3 decades to fill with noise. Even history has a sense of irony. More pain followed, because greatness rarely arrives without a price. Another Champions League final in 2022. Another loss to Real Madrid, this time in a chaotic, dangerous Paris final, overshadowed by crowd chaos outside the stadium. That same season, Liverpool came within a whisper of an unprecedented quadruple, winning 2 domestic cups but falling agonizingly short in both the league and Europe. Klopp had built one of the most feared teams on the planet, and still, football kept finding new ways to make him earn every single ounce of joy. Then, in January 2024, came the announcement nobody wanted to hear. Klopp told the world he would leave Liverpool at the end of the season, not because of failure, not because of pressure, but because he had simply run out of the energy this job demanded of him. It was an act of brutal honesty rarely seen in modern football, a man admitting he had given everything he had left to give. Which brings us back to that final afternoon at Anfield, May 2024. His players, Premier League champions, Champions League winners, stood forming a guard of honor like children watching their father walk out the door for the last time. The stadium sang the anthem that had defined this club for generations, and for once, the words meant something different, aimed directly at the man who had spent 9 years proving them true. Jurgen Klopp arrived at Liverpool, promising nothing more than to be normal. He left as something closer to a legend, not just because of the trophies stacked in the cabinet, but because he had taken a heartbroken club and reminded it, and an entire generation of fans, what it actually feels like to believe again.